So you manage to wrangle a ship and want to make a go of it in the black, signing on crew and taking jobs as can be found. Keep things going until the next payout. Best reward you can hope for being the opportunity to do it all over again. Maybe the law ain't a problem for you now, or maybe it is, but that it will be is a certainty for folks such as you who can't quite stomach the idea of settling into a fenced-in life of other people's expectations. Hell, even the madmen that trawl the verse in an engine room that keeps making a new sound after every trip is preferable to that surrender. A wonderful fantasy that any of us would, I'm sure, regret having the first time an Air League happened. Fortunately for us, we have the Firefly board game to save us from our own foolishness and let our dreams remain beautiful things, safely tucked away as secure impossibilities. This game is a meaty production. The most important commodity to any player is going to be space. Clear the bills off the dining room table because this is going to need everything you got. Now, a new player couldn't be blamed for taking one look at it all set up and asking for cranium instead. With a whopping 13 different decks required to play, it can seem like an example of ponderous, overwrought game design. Kidding aside, it can look like that, but the concepts here are actually pretty simple. Hopefully by the end of the video, all these moving parts will fit together in such a way that instead of seeing an exploded diagram of chaos, all you see is your ship in motion. Now, setup is far simpler than you would think. Pick one of the 4 ships, and then the corresponding color of your miniature. Then choose what captain you want to play and grab a starting drive core out of this deck. Then just take your seed money of 3,000 credits, 6 units of fuel, a couple spare parts. You're captain on the float. Now, those 13 decks we mentioned earlier are broken up into 5 different contacts, the people you'll be doing jobs for to keep yourself fed and flying. Take a job from each of these contacts to start out. 5 more of the decks are for the 5 planets on the board, where you can stop to resupply, hire on crew, and buy stuff that can help you in your ventures like weapons and ship upgrades. Starting out, discard the top 3 cards of each of these decks. And don't let the word discard raise an eyebrow. In this case, that just means you get to see them beforehand to know whether or not going to one of these planets is worth the fuel. 2 of the decks are your navigation decks. One for the civilized part of the system here, in blue, and one for the wild outer edges, where the proper authorities either can't or don't have a presence. The last one is for misbehaving, if that's your aim. Also on the board are the wandering threats to keep life interesting. Symbol of the Alliance in the cruiser that starts on the capital world of Londinium, and the Reaver Cutter starting out here on the Firefly logo. If it comes out of the box broken, don't worry, that's a feature. The last bit of something you're going to need to pick is what story you want to play through during your game. Whichever one you put on the table is going to tell you what your goals are and what the win conditions are for that game. Now, let's get into what to do with all these moving parts. Only you, with the story card in hand, are going to know what your aim is, but I'm going to try to help you shoot for it. Now, after perusing your available starting jobs, decide on which ones are interesting to you and discard the rest until you've got 3 remaining. These are your inactive jobs, ones you've got posted on the notice board but haven't actually started to work yet. These, in addition to the cards you saw discarded from the supply planets, are probably going to influence where you yourself decide to start your journey as a freelance ne'er-do-well. Place your ship wherever you like, as long as it's not a sector already occupied, and we're ready to start actually getting into the gameplay. On any turn you have 4 options for things to do, and you can choose any 2 of them to perform, but not the same one twice. Fly, buy, deal, and work. So let's take them in order and talk about the intricacies of each. Fly. The board is divvied up into spaces we're calling sectors in this game. You may notice that there are blue ones and orange ones. The difference being that the blue ones are your civilized parts of the system, where your worries are being caught doing something the Alliance doesn't like, and the orange is where the Reavers hide, waiting to jump out at you at any time, and desperate people might decide their only option is to make theirs what's yours. So how do we represent that mechanically? With these cards here, the nav decks. When you decide to fly, you can either mosey, which costs nothing and has almost no risk for you involved for you and yours, but you can only move one space, or you can spend one of your fuel and go full burn, which means moving your ship a number of sectors equal to the range of your main drive, this card here. Each time you move into a new sector while you're burning hot though, you draw the top card from the nav deck that corresponds to the territory you're trying to get through, like such. For the most part, you'll be fine. But you can't ever know when something might break, some salvage opportunity just by. Proper authorities want to take a look at what you're hauling, or a half busted up ship carrying a horde of cannibal space crazies is going to come knocking to open your ship like a box of drugstore variety chocolates. Fortunately for you, your captain is the coconut one that nobody wants, but your crew, they're the caramels that go first. Bye. This is where we start demystifying the absurd number of decks over here. On the board are 5 supply planets, where you can use a buy action to refill on fuel or spare parts, the cost of which is on the respective tokens. But that's boring stuff. The fun part of the buy action is these decks. Whatever planet you're on, when you buy, you have access to that planet's deck, representing its available goods. Now earlier you discarded 3 cards from each deck. Those cards are not gone, because at any time, any player can go through these discarded piles and see if there's anything they find interesting, whereupon they can tear sky over to the planet in question and buy them up from the discard pile. The actual mechanic of buying goods or taking on a new crew is this. You choose 3 cards to consider, either from the known discard pile or the unknown deck. They could all come from the pile you know, or you can gamble on finding something better in the pile you don't, or it can be a mixture of the two. However you choose to do it, consider 3, and pick up to 2 to actually buy by paying the cost here on the card. So we're going to have to get into what these cards are so that you know what you're buying and why you might want them. You've got your ship upgrades, which can make you fly further or quieter or give you more cargo space, any number of things. If you buy one of those, they'll slot in right here on the shipboard like such, up to your limit, which is also on the shipboard. You can also hire on crew by paying their fee up front, right here. Each crew member adds to your chances of succeeding at different skill challenges, or might have an additional benefit listed on the card, as well as fills a role on your ship that some jobs require, or pay out bonuses for, as long as you've got them as a member of your team. Crew is probably the most important asset to you in this game, as lonely as it gets out there in the black. But remember that if they help you finish a job, they're going to want their cut. Whatever their initial hire-on fee was, that's how much you'll subtract from the payout of any jobs they help you finish to keep them happy. Of course, hiring crew in the verse comes with background checks. Here on the bottom of the cards, you may or may not see a symbol that marks them as wanted by the law, which can bring some heat down on them should you get figuratively pulled over and wind you up down a member of your crew that you'd been counting on to do a job. And lastly, on the crew you're building, the system is big enough for a whole heap of different kinds of folk, some with looser views on right and wrong than others. It says something that it's easier to label the moral ones than the ones who aren't. But right here is where it'll say if they are or not. Take an immoral job like hauling slaves, and these are the people who aren't going to be too happy with you. You could say that just limits your options, having people on your ship that can decide on their own to take exception to how you decide to get your credits. You might say that. You've also got gear, tools that will either increase your crew's normal bonuses for skill challenges, things like guns, adding to your fighting ability for example, or that will benefit you just by having. You might not need a hacking rig for every job or misadventure, but if you have one on you when the need arises, you'll feel like it was worth every penny as you saunter on by a challenge that might have been a botched job otherwise. Some jobs will even require that you have certain gear to attempt them at all. But nobody's just going to give you anything out here. They'll expect hard credits in exchange, which turns our attention to these other decks over here, the contacts, and the deal action. You start out with a few jobs, but you're going to need a lot more than that to make it through, so whenever you're in need of funds, you just fly over to where one of your 5 possible contacts are and you sit down to deal. Dealing works just like buying, where captains can search the discard piles at any time to see if there's anything on the job board that interests them enough to risk the trip. Then, head on over and consider 3 jobs posted or hidden, and take on up to 2 of them, discarding whatever you don't want anything to do with so that some other captain can snatch it up if they like. Then, down here, you can have up to 3 active jobs, those you're working, which are face up and visible to everybody, and 3 you're holding on to for later that are hidden from the other captains. When you take a job, there are a few things to consider. First is payment. Is that check going to be worthwhile after you pay your crew? Because however much you hired them on for, that's what they're taking out of that. Do you have what you even need to start it? Some jobs will need a mechanic or a pilot or just a minimum level of skill in a certain aspect of surviving the verse. Is the job legal or illegal? Getting caught at it could land you with a warrant, which is going to tangle things up down the line. Legality aside, is the job just downright the wrong thing to do? If you've got people with a shred of decency on your ship, taking a job like that ain't going to make them happy to be flying with you. So now you got your job. 4th action you can take on your turn is to work it. First, verify you meet your requirements, then make the trip to wherever the job needs doing. Then once you're there, pick which of your crew you're taking along and what kind of gear you want them carrying, keeping in mind that, but for a few exceptions, each crew member can only carry 1 piece of kit. Finally, use a work action to do the job. Some will require 2 stops, such as hauling cargo or people, which means 2 work actions, 1 for pickup and 1 for drop-off. Others are a 1-stop crime spree and illegal, where you may go to a bank somewhere and pull a heist, for example. That's where the misbehave deck comes in, because if it didn't require misbehaving, it wouldn't be illegal. If your job requires misbehaving, it'll have 1 or more icons right here on the card that look suspiciously like the cards in the misbehave deck. There's a reason for that, and I'll respect your intelligence enough to not to explain what that is. For each icon, you'll have to successfully misbehave. This is a good time to talk about the skill challenges, since most of these misbehave cards are going to require them. Like I said before, your captain and your crew have little icons on them that indicate an affinity for doing different things as needs doing. Might be fighting or technical know-how, or could just be the gift of gab. Whatever it is, when a skill challenge arises, it'll have a number you need to beat to pull it off. You roll this die, add the appropriate amount of expertise at your disposal, and there's your final result. If it meets or exceeds your target, you've pulled through. Less, and a lot of the time the card requiring the skill challenge will tell you what kind of foolishness you've blundered into. By the way, on this die, instead of a 6, you've got a Firefly picture. If you're lucky enough to roll that, it's called the Thrilling Heroics, and you get credit for the 6 it replaces, as well as getting to roll again. Assuming you've managed the job, you're now solid with that contact. Since you've shown your worth to them, there's some additional bonuses that they'll open up to you detailed on the front of any of that contact's cards, in addition to their sudden willingness to purchase whatever cargo or contraband you happen to pick up on your travels at a flat rate for hard currency. To indicate that you're solid with someone, just put that job card above your shipboard for reference. And there's your gameplay loop of the Firefly board game. Travel from point A to point B, buy what and who you think you need, negotiate with some unsavory characters, and do the jobs you can get while the occasional poor circumstance waits to goose you unpleasantly when you least expect it. Do that in any combination you feel best suits you. Check off the goals on your story card, picked right up front, and whoever finishes it out first wins. Not too complicated once it's all laid out. There are some minutiae that need going over though, the details that flavor your game, like a nice spice selection, or an unfortunate incident in the kitchen the server hopes you don't notice. Being wanted is nice, unless it's by the rule of government. Anytime you're told by a card to take a wanted token, put one down near your shipboard. If you're working for a contact at the time, you are immediately no longer solid with that contact, because apparently you can't be trusted not to call attention to yourself. You lose all the benefits of being solid, but can get them back later by doing another job. As well as all that, if you're caught by the law while wanted, there's some pretty hefty fines that can set you back a ways for each warrant you got out on you. Now, we've all been disgruntled at work, and crewing a ship in tight quarters with other breathing bipedal animals ain't much different. There are some things that can begin turning a crew against their captain. Choose not to pay them their fair share, or take a job stealing food from a starving community with a moral crew member on board, and you'll have to put a disgruntled token on them. With one, any other captain in the game can fly right up and lure them off your boat with a payment equal to their cost, and there's nothing you can do about it. Additionally, make them really unhappy with you, they'll jump ship immediately, go into the discard pile for anybody else to swoop in and hire up. And you're not immune to getting up on the wrong side of the bunk either. If you get 2 disgruntled tokens on your leader card, what I imagine is a thrashing of the kitchen and much gnashing of teeth as you tell your crew exactly where they can go off your damn ship. Everybody fired but you. It's not just crew you can trade out there on the drift either. 2 ships share a sector. There's nothing keeping a couple of cooperative-minded captains from exchanging fuel, parts, gear, whatever they like, and whatever prices they deem fair. You don't even have to use up one of your actions or wait your turn. If you're gonna live in the black, you have to accept that you may die there too. Well, not you. Like I said, you're coconut. You as captain have a special kind of plot armor around you that keeps you from ever meeting a grisly end, but your crew has no such protections. Be it reavers or bandits or jobs gone wrong, there are gonna be a lot of times where someone ends up with a burial at sea. If you've got a medic on board, you can try to save them by rolling a 5 or more on the die provided, but otherwise, they're gone for good. They don't go back home. They never see their families again. They're gone.
Now the change in the recording is because I realized that I mentioned a couple of wandering threats like Chekhov's gun and never actually fired them earlier. The Alliance cruiser and the Reaver cutter will wander around the board, moving based on what cards get drawn from the navigation decks. If you encounter either one, just follow the directions on their card. And a word of advice, get a pilot and a mechanic as quickly as possible. Those Reavers are not kidding around. And we're back in the closet again, because I don't know how to close these things out, or how to do the rest of it, really. But that's the Firefly board game. I'm sure I've missed some things. I'm also not trying to get editorial with it, not trying to talk about the quality of the game or how fun it is. If you want more of that, let me know. What I'm trying to do is just stick to the rules, because that's the main point of this video series. But if you have anything else you wanted to say, let me know in the comments in YouTube, or come to pregamenight.com. Let me know there. Website is pretty bare. I'm still trying to figure out ways to create these efficiently and have them on a schedule so that there's a reason to make repeat visits to the site. Also coming up with other things to put there, more along the lines of editorial and entertainment kind of things. But again, I'm just having to, I guess, kind of reinvent the wheel to create efficiently and regularly. Also, I can get kind of lazy. pregamenight.com is the website. Let me know what you think, and thanks for watching.